Coming up on AEA Amplified, Gogo Business Aviation is on the countdown to launch for its 5G network.
From the Aircraft Electronics Association, this is AEA Amplified, a podcast for aviation's technology experts, with your host, Jeff Hill.
Hello and welcome to AEA Amplified, sponsored by Genesis Aerosystems, a Moog company, and a leading provider of integrated avionics systems for military and civil operators around the world. From rugged integrated flight displays to digital flight control systems for rotor and fixed-wing aircraft, Genesis has solutions to increase safety and decrease pilot workload. To learn more about how Genesis can help your customers, visit genesis-aerosystems.com. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Jeff Hill, for this December 1st, 2021 edition of AEA Amplified. And our guest today is Sergio Aguirre, the president of Gogo Business Aviation and an AEA member company since 1992. He joined Gogo in 2007 and is an aviation industry veteran with more than 30 years of experience. Sergio, thank you so much for joining us today from your company's headquarters there in Broomfield, Colorado. How are you today?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be with you and always talking to the AAA team.
Well, Sergio, with the work of your company, it seems like the future of connectivity is already here. So I want to dive right into today's topic and learn a little bit more about in-flight connectivity and all the incredible technologies that make it possible. And let me start by asking you about the Gogo advanced systems, which I believe reached a few milestones recently. There are now over 200 business aircraft flying with either the L5 or L3 systems installed, and that covers over 750,000 flights that have been flown with those systems on board. So congratulations are certainly in order to you and your team for those accomplishments. But tell us a little bit about advanced L3 and L5 systems, and more specifically about the platform. What is it and what does it do for business aviation?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, Avance has been the fastest adopted product that Gogo's ever had. We now have, like you said, over 2,000 flying in operation. And so it's been a tremendously well accepted by the marketplace. But basically what it is it's a hardware and software platform that is unique in that when most of our the avionics companies or people design hardware and systems, they really think about it from the perspective of hardware and software on an airplane. And what makes Avance so unique is that it's actually designed with 3 pillars, not 2. And the third pillar is that it was designed with the intent to leverage and use the cloud-based connectivity systems, and so that is a crucial part of it, and it really has many facets of benefits. I mean, from the customer's perspective, the flight department's perspective, there's a lot of flexibility in there in terms of how much connectivity do you want, how do you want it set up, how do you use it, and then the ability to grow and add additional features and functions without having to take the aircraft down for scheduled maintenance, certification cost, and so forth. So from that user perspective, it is tremendous from that regard. But right now in this COVID environment, one of the other tremendous benefits that we see from Avance is that because it is both a hardware and a software platform, that means that from a hardware and electronics component standpoint, we have commonality of parts, like 80 to 90% of commonality of parts between an L3, an L5, and an SES system, which are all different hardware form factors that you could install in your aircraft. And what that's allowed us to do, it's allowed us to really work with our supply chain and make sure that we don't run out of parts and can deliver parts as need be. So from an efficiency manufacturing standpoint, from a supply chain standpoint, it's tremendous because it minimizes the amount of the individual part numbers we have, the different SKUs. It makes the assembly more repetitive, to be able to repeat it in a very systematic way. And then from the end user perspective, or I should say from the flight department and maintenance support standpoint, it has tremendous benefits because the box, the advanced system, is constantly calls home telling us how it's doing. And so we use artificial intelligence to take certain malfunction codes that come off that give us an indication of areas that need to be improved on before the customer even experiences anything. Right now, we're in the middle of a over-the-air software delivery trial that we're doing with some of our customers. We have about 5 or 6 customers out there, and we're delivering LRU software over the air. Well, it's on the ground through it's over the air, but not while it's flying. And that makes it so that fleet operators can keep their systems up to date without very easy, without having to tear up floorboards to get access to the box and so forth. So there's a whole series of benefits. But the one thing that it does above all else, which I think helps us a tremendous amount, is that to a certain extent, to the extent that we can in this industry, it future-proofs us. And what do I mean by that? So we build other features on Avance. For example, what we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, I hope, is our 5G offering. So we're going to market next year with a 5G system, and it's designed to leverage everything that an L5 customer already has in their aircraft. So there's no rip and replace element to it. It's very easy to install because we're leveraging all of the wiring, the RF, the IO, the in-cabin Wi-Fi system. All of that is being leveraged. And so it just has tremendous amount of, operational efficiency, customer satisfaction, customer and technical support, and then that future-proof. So that someday, perhaps if we ever get into the global broadband business when LEOs come about, that would also be a very simple upgrade to an advanced platform. So probably more than you wanted to hear.
No, that's great, and that's great information for the repair stations out there, your dealer networks, to understand that. It sounds like it's a very fast and easy installation because it's designed to leverage Advance. So let's do focus on our members and our dealers just a little bit, and all those professionals who attended the AEA conventions in recent years are certainly well aware of the new 5G air-to-ground network that's getting ready to launch next year. But we do probably have some listeners who just aren't as familiar with it. So I'd like to talk with you a little bit about 5G and get into a few more technical areas. First off, I had heard some discussion recently about the Gogo multi-load balancer, or the GMB. What is the GMB and what does it mean for Gogo 5G?
Well, that's what's so neat about when you really are trying to innovate and push the envelope in terms of technology, you end up having to solve problems you didn't know existed when you started with. And GMB is some technology that we've developed within Gogo that basically allows us to use either for example, in the L5, a simple way of that, the L5 is that provides currently our 4G system. We have 2 air cards in there. And so the beginnings where we started with this GMB, originally what we started doing is using those 2 air cards to provide increased capacity and throughput for the current air-to-ground network, right? And so that's what kind of started us down this path, and learning how to take 2 channels, aggregate them together, bond them together, depending on what your background is, for one user experience. Well, when we came to doing 5G, the 5G technology, the core technology, is really built around the infrastructure of it. Allows you to bring all these different types of frequencies together to provide a really good experience. And so what GMB does is it allows us to use Gogo's licensed frequencies and the unlicensed frequencies that we're going to be using, put them together for an enhanced connectivity experience for a customer. So it's basically taking 2 pipes and making it one big pipe. But I hate saying it that way because it sounds very easy. It took the team a long time to really perfect it.
Yeah, and Sergio, during the new product introductions at last year's AEA convention back in June in Dallas, and then again at the NBAA convention in Las Vegas, I saw the video of your team installing the first 5G antennas at a location in Nebraska, and some flight testing that your team has been doing for both the ground antennas and the airborne antennas. But can you talk a little bit about the work your team has done to develop those antennas and explain why the ground-based antennas are so large relative to your existing ground antennas?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was once again, after you've built so many networks, you kind of learn you learn, right? And there's certain amount of physics that you just can't overcome. And the bigger the antenna, the more gain, the more throughput you get. Um, but we realized that to really address the entire market across the business aviation market, we needed to keep the aviation antenna as small as possible. So one of the things that you can do when you have a vertically integrated product offering is you can make adjustments to one side or the other. And in this case, what we did is we kept the antenna on the aircraft side in a very similar shape and size as our current L5 to keep the upgrade very simple. And we made the ground-based antenna that goes on the tower much, much larger. If you saw the video, you saw it's about, I think, 5 feet by 5 feet. Takes a crane get it up. I mean, it's very, very large. And really, it's just a matter of making sure that we have the maximum amount of throughput, so that we can give the customers the best possible experience, while keeping the aircraft antenna as small as possible for aerodynamic. We don't really want to get into large aircraft antennas. You get into large aircraft, your certification cost goes up, your installation cost goes up, and then you have to relocate other antennas, and it limits your addressable market. And we realize now that the size of the aircraft does not dictate whether you want connectivity or not. Everybody wants connectivity. So to the extent that we can keep the antenna smaller on the aircraft, we can accommodate more customers in smaller airframes.
No doubt about it. And I believe that the 5G air-to-ground network is actually the fourth air-to-ground network that Gogo has designed and built, if I'm not mistaken. And that's certainly a testament to the expertise that your team has in building the air-to-ground networks on a nationwide scale. Can you share a little bit more insight on the Gogo 5G in terms of, you're on your countdown to launch, and exactly what's coming to fruition leading up to your full network launch next year in 2022?
Yeah, absolutely. So the videos that you saw that you made reference to was when we installed our first tower. We're building out a 7-tower network test site in I would say the Nebraska Great Lakes area. And so right now what we're doing is we're actually building out that network, and that test network will be done by the end of this year. And we will use this network. The testing that you saw was really taking a look at the RF, at the antenna patterns, the RF lobes, and so forth. It wasn't doing a complete end-to-end internet connectivity, but we will use this 7-tower site to basically validate all of our ground-based software, our hard-based software, the pointing, the accuracy of the antennas, the handoffs, and so we will start doing that this year. Once we've got that locked down and we're comfortable with it, then we will start deploying about 17 to 20 sites across the entire United States, so that we can have the network build out with enough time to fly the nationwide network before we launch service. When you deploy a network, one of the things that you have to do is that you have to make sure that all of the antennas, both on the ground, are pointing accurately, that your software that's pointing your antenna, your phased array antenna on the aircraft, that its pointing accuracy is correct. And then you have to fly the pattern to make sure you don't have any dead spots, and adjust where need be. So we will deploy this network throughout through Q1, Q2, and Q3. Most of Q3 will be around really test flying it, fine tuning it. At that point, doing real 5G end-to-end internet experiences, looking for dead spots, looking for rogue transmissions, and just making sure that when we put it on a customer's aircraft, or one of our dealers puts it on a customer's aircraft, it works as advertised, and we don't use them as guinea pigs. But that's on that side. What people don't see is everything going on internally at Gogo. So if you think about it, we're having to set up new test equipment. We're having to train our people, our dealers. So we have a training center downstairs dedicated to providing advanced troubleshooting and system familiarity with all of our dealers, so that before they get their system shipped, our dealers can send their avionics technicians or engineers here, and with hands-on go through a theoretical and a practical, so that once again they're not using the customer's aircraft as an experiment. So a tremendous amount of stuff going on to get ready for our launch next year.
Yeah, and that's again more great news for your dealers, AEA members. And again, going back to the NBAA show in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, I also had a chance to attend your media luncheon where your team presented some video and photos of your network and some of the extreme conditions and challenges that they face and they have to work with to just keep it operational. I was fascinated to hear the stories about what it takes to build the 5G ground networks and maintain all the 5G antennas on hundreds of towers throughout the United States. Your team has to build and maintain these towers in the most remote locations imaginable. And they, it was just interesting to see they come across rattlesnakes. They face other dangerous animals in the wild. They deal with all sorts of weather conditions, including snow and ice. They have to be trained to adapt in all those conditions. So I'm not sure that our listeners really have a full appreciation for the amount of dedication and the resources that it takes to put this ground infrastructure in place. Can you share exactly what it does take to make it all happen and keep your staff members safe at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Well, just to kind of accent that point, our network operations team, the men and women that go out and build and maintain the towers, because this is not just during the building cycle, it's also during the maintaining cycle. They go through survival training like special forces. They go through winter survival, desert survival, so that, if somebody's caught up on a mountain and a blizzard hits, they have the skill set required to survive. So we try to deploy our network on areas. Our towers are typically on the highest mountain we can find. And so it's very difficult to get utilities there, all the equipment there. And so they're constantly confronted with challenges that like you talked about, whether it's rattlesnakes or weather, but that's when they're building it or maintaining it. But what people don't realize is that when you see a snowstorm come in or a hurricane, we have a disaster team that goes and starts repositioning equipment. So we have these things called COWs, cells on wheels, so that when you get a hurricane come in and blow over a bunch of towers, we literally, with an 18-wheeler, have towers and ground-based equipment set up to go and deploy them in those areas. And they don't wait until the flooding's over, they're in there the next day after the hurricane, after the snowstorm or the ice storm, so that we can keep our network up 99.9% of the time. I forget what the actual number is, but it's in the 99, high 99s. And it takes a lot of people, a lot of effort to go to remote areas, and we value the sanctity of life, and so we're not going to expose somebody to something where their life is in danger. But what they do is dangerous, and we're very appreciative for how much they're Johnny and Jane on the spot.
No doubt about it. And also, I think it was in late October, you announced that you expect Gogo 5G to deliver approximately 25 megabits per second on average, with peak speeds in the range of 75 to 80 megabits per second. I think that's fast, but put that into perspective for our audience. How fast is fast?
Well, let me explain how we came up with those numbers and why we did it the way we did it. One of the things that I think as an industry where we have done our customers a disservice, and what I mean by our customers, I'm talking about the dealer network that sells our systems and the flight departments who keep it operational for the users, is that in our industry we tend to talk about theoretical maxes, and people talk about these theoretical maxes and they say, my theoretical max is 100 megabits or this, and we've grown cynical enough in our industry that we know that, okay, well, that's not what I'm going to see. So what we've attempted to do with this 25 megabit number, what we did is we basically had our network engineers, our RF engineers, take a look at all the noise floor level, all the situation, take a look at the RF patterns that we have from our antennas, the throughput, the gain, And we gave them city pairs. We said, okay, on a typical flight from New York to Miami, what are you going to see? And they literally laid it out from an RF standpoint. And, where are the networks? Where are the towers? How much ground noise is there? And we did that across multiple of sites. And so we came up with this number it's an average of what we saw, that it's what you'll see to the aircraft. And so we didn't really want to focus in on the theoretical max. We wanted to focus in on, what are you going to see? What are you going to experience? So that when our dealers communicate with somebody, they don't get, a flight department. Everybody understands that, yes, it could do a lot more on a normal day when you're flying over Nebraska, but typically if you're on a flight, you're going to see about 25 megabits. So that's what we did, and that's how we did it. We looked at typical, very popular business aviation city pairs and did an analysis there. Now, as we fly the network more, we'll improve our accuracy and update those numbers. But it was an attempt to try to correct something that I feel has done our customers a disservice as an industry. And I'm not saying just Gogo. I mean, whether it's Viasat or Inmarsat or whoever the network provider is, I think that we need to do a better job of communicating the experience to our customers. That was an attempt of doing so.
And once again, we are visiting with Gogo Business Aviation President Sergio Aguirre here on AEA Amplified, sponsored by Genesis Aerosystems, a Moog company. And Sergio, Duncan Aviation is another longtime AEA member company and has multiple locations throughout the United States. You recently announced a partnership with Duncan Aviation on a 5G STC portfolio. So what can you tell us about this partnership with Duncan and what it means for Gogo 5G?
Well, where it really started was, when we started working on our certification plan for the 5G system, Gogo will always go out and get the first STC so that we can maintain the PMA and basically be able to revise the STC as need be through different software and obsolescence issues. So it's our standard that we get our own STC all the time. But we're not really certification experts. And so what we did is we ended up partnering with Duncan and asked them if they would be interested in developing the 5G STC and for Gogo. So Gogo will own the STC, but they're doing it for us. And so once we started working so closely with them, they basically said, we have this portfolio of L5 STCs that we would like to upgrade them all. We'd like to do a minor amendment to all of them to include 5G. Is that something Gogo would be willing to help us with? And we absolutely, it's like we have a great relationship, not just with Duncan, but with our other dealers. And we do everything we can to help stimulate and support so that flight departments, regardless of what type of aircraft you fly, there's an STC path available to you to get it installed. So Duncan has a very comprehensive of L5 STCs that they are going to be upgrading to 5G. But likewise, we will continue to do the same with all of our other dealers as well in terms of supporting them when they have an airframe that they would like to get an STC on. We'll work with them as well. But the beauty behind this is that we have this portfolio of L5 STCs from Duncan. So when we go to market, the ramp up and the wait time for customers is going to be a lot less, so it's a really benefit to the customer in the channel as well.
Yeah, we'd love to see those partnerships develop between those AEA member companies and working together. So I want to take a moment to address a topic that's gotten a little bit of publicity. And that is, let's talk about 5G and be clear on one important item. Let me set the stage for you for just a second here. Back on November 2nd, the FAA issued a special airworthiness information bulletin to equipment and aircraft manufacturers, operators, and pilots. And that came about from an ongoing effort to address the overlap between the modern 5G rollout and established aviation frequency use. And in part, the SAIB states, and let me quote it here for just a second, the Special Airworthiness Information Bulletin informs aircraft manufacturers, radio altimeter manufacturers, operators, and pilots of the planned deployment of wireless broadband networks in 3700 to 3980 megahertz bands which was scheduled to begin December the 5th in the 3700 to 3800 megahertz bands. And the SAIB recommends that radio altimeter manufacturers, aircraft manufacturers, and the operators voluntarily provide to federal authorities specific information related to altimeter design and functionality, the specifics on deployment and the usage of radio altimeters in aircraft, and that they test and assess their equipment in conjunction with federal authorities, end quote. So Sergio, as you know, the AEA has also been participating in an industry coalition to evaluate the safety concerns and find a reasonable solution. This coalition has requested a group be formed with the involvement of the FCC, the FAA, 5G interests, and the aviation industry to address those concerns. In fact, on November the 5th, the industry sent a letter to the National Economic Council calling for a delay to the deployment of 5G technologies to the C-band until the safety and efficiency of the national airspace system is ensured. But what I want to be clear here and give you a chance to be clear is that Gogo has never used the frequencies under discussion between the FAA, the FCC, and industry. So if I'm correct, Gogo 5G is not the subject of those discussions regarding 5G interference. Is that correct? And can you elaborate a little bit more on that topic?
That is absolutely correct. And I just want to thank the AEA, Gamma, and NBAA, the effort that these industry organizations have done and have been doing for safety and communicating with clarity around this is very, very much appreciated by Gogo, because there has been a lot of confusion. People think it's a 5G problem. It's not a 5G problem. It's a specific frequency issue that is being considered with some of the ground-based terrestrial systems. Gogo has no plans. We've actually participated in joining all our different aviation associations, AAA and others, in signing these letters, ensuring that we maintain aviation safe and that we don't introduce frequencies that are going to interfere with altimeters or other essential systems on board the aircraft. But so you're absolutely correct. Just to be very clear, Gogo did issue a press release. We do have statements. We've sent out a white paper on it that explains it. I think the AAA members would really like to see the white paper. It's a very technical. It shows the history of it. It shows the frequency bands, how they're very different from what our 5G is. But just to be very clear, Gogo 5G does not and will not use the frequencies in question that AEA and other aviation industries associations are objecting to because of the concern of safety and interference with altimeter. We are not.
Very good, and thanks so much for clearing that up for our members. One other topic that you alluded to a little bit, I think earlier on, and that is nearly every industry on the planet's been impacted by supply chain issues in the past year as we come out of a pandemic, and certainly aviation is no exception. What are your observations on the supply chain crisis as it relates to both your company and aviation in general?
It's something that continues to evolve. We have different variances of the problem. Originally we all started off with the avionics companies, the OEMs, the electronics manufacturers. Because of the slowdown, because of COVID, everybody started off with very low inventory levels. So when the increase in demand started, the flying started, we were all in a very poor position to address that demand. So that was the first phase of it. Then we had the ongoing issue of the electronics components having a shortage, not just in aviation but worldwide. Then we had situations where we had the extreme weather in Dallas that shut down many electronics factories for a long time. We had the situation with the Suez Canal that blocked that. We had different outbreaks in COVID. We now find ourselves where we now see it's rippled all the way through, and now we have a tremendous backlog and shortage of truck drivers and dock workers to get the equipment out of the ports onto the onto the 18-wheelers and distributed. So it's much more. It's evolved. Now we have a logistics issue in addition. We see the cost of freight going up. We see people trying to use air freight. So it's impacted us tremendously. I am very, very happy to say that from a Gogo supply chain standpoint, our team has done a phenomenal job. We already have placed orders. Just think about this for a second. We've already placed orders through Q2 of 2023 into our supply chain. So that takes a tremendous amount of working capital that we have to allocate to those purchase orders instead of running the business. But we literally now have, with 52-week lead times, with the logistics issues, even when our suppliers build something on time and are ready to ship it, we sometimes can't get it shipped. We have to air freight it. We're air freighting things from the UK. But luckily, it's not crippled us yet because we've had very long-term planning through this whole program, because we are building it on the advanced platform, and we have very good visibility into how many SKUs, how many individual part numbers, and we've given that demand, and we've placed those orders, and we've placed deposits. We have enough componentry and people to continue to increase. We had originally our forecast this year to build just under 600 units. We're going to end the year building close to 900 units. Next year, we're projecting that we're going to build somewhere between 1,100 and 1,300 units is what we're supplying for. And so, our team has been able to stay ahead of the curve so that we can get parts to our dealers, but our dealers have been phenomenal working with us in terms of making sure that they give us the real drop dead date so we get the parts to who needs them so we don't miss aircraft. But it's been a tremendous effort, but so far we still have the trains on the track still.
Very good. Well, Sergio, thanks again for taking the time to visit with us here on AA Amplified. We appreciate your time. And is there anything we missed that you'd like to cover for our podcast listeners?
Something with this particular audience. I mean, I'm not as technical as most of your listeners here, so I do it a disservice. But I love to read your magazine, and I love the level of how technical you get. And there is one component of 5G that I think your listeners would be very interested in. Our 5G antenna, we refer to it as the MB13. And the reason we refer to it as MB13 is because it's actually 3 different antennas in one housing. So from an engineering standpoint, from a packaging standpoint, and from an installation standpoint, it's something that our teams have done that I think, and no, I don't think the end customers are going to appreciate it. They're not going to see it, but our dealers, I think, are going to love it, that design the installations, because what we've done is we have elements for the 2.4 frequency, we have elements for the 850 frequencies in there, and we also have a terrestrial modem element in there so that when the aircraft's on the ground, it provides the terrestrial modem coverage, so it makes the cabin installation a lot easier. You don't have to run antennas in the cabin. So I just thought that would be a little. Most people are never going to hear about that. Most people aren't going to see that. But when you see that antenna, it's the exact same size, just about, as the L5 antenna, but it has actually 3 antenna elements built into it. So it's just a tremendous effort that the Gogo engineering team and our vendor that is just an expert RF guy. It's just great packaging thing that's going to help in the certification a whole bunch. That's just a little tidbit.
Absolutely, and we've covered a lot of ground today, a lot of content. I know the AEA members and other listeners will appreciate all the information that you've shared today. Thank you so much again for taking some time out of your day to spend with us. And again, that is Gogo Business Aviation President Sergio Aguirre here on AEA Amplified. To learn more about Gogo Business Aviation, you can visit them online at business.gogoair.com. That's business.gogoair.com. And before we go, let me also remind our listeners of a few important items. First of all, the AEA Educational Foundation is once again going to award more than 20 scholarships for the 22-23 school year, and they will be awarded to students pursuing a career in avionics or aircraft maintenance, as well as students from AEA member companies. So the deadline to submit a scholarship application for that is April the 1st of 22. And those applications are available online at aea.net/scholarship. I also want to encourage those of you planning to attend the AEA International Convention and Trade Show next spring in New Orleans to save the dates and book your hotel rooms now. The show does take place March the 28th through the 31st at the Ernest N. Memorial Convention Center, but please keep in mind that the NCAA Men's Basketball Final Four takes place in New Orleans immediately following the conclusion of the AEA convention. So secure your hotel rooms now before it's too late, and you can find a hotel reservations link for the AEA room block at the Hilton New Orleans Riverside at aea.net/convention. Early bird registration also is now open through December 31st. Register to attend and save $180 per person with the early bird rate that's available through the end of the year. A link to register for the show is at aea.net/convention. And finally, remember, if your company is hiring, don't forget to post your career opportunities on the AEA jobs board at aea.net/jobs. Free resume posting is available for all of you job seekers, so check it out at aea.net/jobs. And that's going to wrap it up for today. We hope you can join us again soon for another episode of AEA Amplified, sponsored by Genesis Aerosystems, a mode company. To learn more about Genesis and its full range of products, visit genesis-aerosystems.com. Thanks again to Sergio Aguirre for joining us today. And until next time here on AEA Amplified, this is your host, Jeff Hill, wishing you a safe and happy holiday season and blue skies ahead. So long, everybody.